Hello everyone, how you doing? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome to another video. This is a PS Does Book Reviews video. So I will talk about books, 3 books in particular, because I've been reading a lot, been traveling. So when I travel, I usually take 1 book or 2 books with me, depending how far I am in the book. So I have whole 3 books to talk about. I'm going to talk about 5-10 minutes on each one, maybe less, depending on the book and the contents that I have to say. They range between horror thriller to space thriller kind of things. So all of them kind of coming of age, curiously enough. Well, not Nightflyers, that one is not. Anyways, books. The first book that I want to talk about is this one, The Night House by Joan Nesbo. It's a horror thriller kind of a book, not the usual thing that Joan Nesbo usually writes, which was kind of interesting, kind of different. I usually like Joan Nesbo's detective thriller sort of works. That was why I was picking up a new Joan Nesbo. This one was left field from what I was expecting, but still pretty decent. Follows the story of this teenager named Richard, and there are some kids dying around them. No one believed Richard that the kids died in this mysterious ways. It ends up becoming a sort of detective slash coming of age sort of a story with the kid and no one believing him and him trying to figure out how to solve things. Has some supernatural references, has some twists that make it a bit macabre or horror kind of thing, supernatural in a way. The second chapter sort of tries to explain the first chapter's story. But as it goes on, you start noticing a few holes in the storyline and the thought of the character themselves, and it starts becoming more and more horror again, with some supernatural things happening as well again, and it all escalates into this thing that seems a bit nonsense to what the original first story was. And then the first chapter comes and tries to explain all of that before. And I actually read some reviews that didn't really like the book because of that third chapter. But I kind of liked it. I thought it had like a fitting explanation for all things, and I like that. I prefer when things fit a logic in the end and not just, oh, it was all a fucked up dream, haha. I don't really like when those books end that way. I like things to have a logical sense or have a direct explanation or a deduction of what you're actually reading. Otherwise, it just feels like I'm wasting my time reading things that don't make any sense. So yeah, I know that's a personal thing, but it is what it is. Decent Joe Nesbo book overall. I understand the criticism. It's not really his usual style, not the detective murder thriller that Joe Nesbo usually does. So in that sense, I can understand why people really didn't like it as much. But I think it does a pretty good job at horror thriller. I don't really read horror that much, so I can't really compare it with other things that well. But yeah, I liked it. It had some good iconography, some good references there. Storyline did its job, good characters overall. So yeah, recommend if you like horror thriller. Check it out, Joan Nesbo's The Night House. Then the second book that I've been reading is this one, George R.R. Martin's Nightflyers. Yes, the same George R.R. Martin that did Song of Ice and Fire. I was very curious to learn that he had done some space thriller stuff in the past, and it was actually pretty good. It's usual trope of a science team crew that takes on a space journey to meet this alien race called Volcrin, an alien race that has been passing slowly through our near space for many light years. And actually, the first chapter is just talking about the Volcrin in general to give us a little bit of curiosity on them and try to understand why 1 or 2 of the characters are interested in meeting the Volcrin. So yeah, they recruit this ship and put this crew together to try and meet up with them and go on this little journey. It has the first thing that we notice is that it has this particularly mysterious captain called Royd Eris. It's a classical sci-fi setting overall, assigning some characters to their skill set, which I remember was originally a trope from Time Machine originally, and that seems to still be going on in a lot of sci-fi themed kind of books. Instead of memorizing all of the names, you just tell their names. You know, this is the telepath, this is the person that does engineering, this is the computer nerd, and you kind of identify them through that. Here, actually, George actually names everyone, and that becomes a lot more confusing because it's too many characters. You start having difficulty knowing which is which. At the end, it's just a mess of people. When they call them by the name, you're not sure which one they are referring to anymore. But that might have been my mistake for not paying too close attention when they were first introduced. But yeah. It is what it is. In proper space thriller fashion, things start to go wrong on this journey, and the captain being the obvious suspect for his secrecy ways. He never shows himself in public and that kind of stuff, so that usually becomes the suspect. It's a bit of an Among Us scenario for those who play the game more recently. So you have this space trip happening, some things are happening, and you have to kind of figure out who is the culprit behind it. It develops very fast though, so you don't really have much time for that detective work to kick in, which I kind of didn't like that aspect, but I will talk a bit more about it later on. This book was written back in 1980, or the first version of this short story was written at least in 1980. Then later it was turned on into a novella or whatever they call this. And I only knew George R.R. Martin from writing the Song of Ice and Fire series, which I'm a very big fan of. I read all of them about 10, 12 years ago, around when the TV series was getting started. I have not seen this TV series in particular. It's mentioned right here that it became a sci-fi series. I did not see it. I'm curious to see if they made it justice or not. I will check the IMDb rating if it's any good or not. But yeah, this edition in particular was also pretty nice because it had some illustrations by David Palumbo, which apparently is an artist that often does this kind of sci-fi space drawing things. Drawings are pretty good. They are realistic looking. They fit well. So yeah, pretty good additional thing to put in the book. So yeah, good edition overall. If you're wondering which edition might be the best one to get, this one seemed pretty good. What else? I did like the book and the story. Don't really want to spoil things here. I'm not too sure about the ending and how fast the story progressed overall. So I like the concept of the story. I like the way it unfolded, but I felt it was like a bit too rushed. We could have learned a bit more about each of the different characters first, before things started going terribly wrong with them. But yeah, overall the ending was a bit, but I guess it's interesting. It leaves you wondering, and the stories do need to have an ending. It didn't feel like the correct one to me, but still, good story, good read. I did like it overall. So yeah, good sci-fi book, and rather short. I read this quite quickly. I think about 3 days or something like that. But yeah, I was traveling, so I had a lot of time. And then the last book that I just finished today is this one, Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. I had heard about this book a lot. It's a reference whenever someone speaks about sci-fi, space sci-fi, or kids battling armadas of aliens sort of scenarios. People usually refer to Ender's Game. And yeah, you can see a lot of it influencing later on in other sci-fi books, series, and movies after you read this. And this was released in 1970, so like a bit of the heyday of sci-fi stories. I'm not a science fiction historian. I don't really know about it, but as far as I understood, there were a lot of things about space coming out in the 50s, 60s, and 70s because of the whole space race thing that was going on between the Soviet Union and the United States. So it inspired a lot of artists to write about space and traveling to space and that kind of stuff. Star Trek came out in 1966, to give you an idea of the timings, and Landing on the Moon was in 1969. This was released in 1970, just a year after. So yeah, definitely inspired by the whole craze around the space theme. What else? I saw a lot of parallels with movies like Starfighter, for example, from 1984, which is a movie that I have some good memories of. Starship Troopers as well, from 1997. Also have some people fighting off some insect creatures kind of thing. So it's also very similar to what happens here. Yeah, they fight some alien race, which are called the Buggers. Yeah, it's about Ender, a little kid that joins the ranks to go fight them. I will talk a little bit more about the story in a while. What I liked most about this book was the strong duality between war training and what is morally correct for a society. Although it is left as a bit of an afterthought from the book, you only have glimpses of it and you think about it after reading the book. It's not the main plot of the book. The main plot line is actually following the young life of Ender, that is mentioned here, a young kid who shows great promise in strategic gameplay. And when I'm talking young, he's like 9, I think, or 8 when he gets recruited. So yeah, young. So yeah, the main plot's following the young life of Ender, a young kid who shows great promise in strategic gameplay and gets recruited to play on some simulated battles with other kids who are older than him. The funny thing is that this was written in the 1970s, and back then computers and video games weren't what they are now. Home computers in the 70s were a little more than fancy calculators. There was no realistic simulation of games happening like modern games have nowadays. So hearing the author describe here how the kids in this world were, playing simulations and realistic simulations where you were immersed in the world and exploring the world, and then they stop down. They also play some games on arcades themselves. They have simulations in sort of cockpits, sort of scenarios, and they have this desk device, a portable device where you could receive messages and send messages, and also play some simulation games there as well, which looks a lot like a tablet that we have nowadays. So in a way, it was predicting what ended up actually happening in the future of computing, or the future of computing maybe drew from this kind of stories that were written back then and then made them reality now in the 19th and 2000s. So yeah, pretty cool, and you can't really tell that it's from the 70s when you read it, which for me was pretty cool. Sometimes you read some old sci-fi and you can tell that they are predicting things and it's not really accurate. This one is pretty dead on. Like everything that he wrote here, if it was written last year, everything still makes sense. So I would have believed that it was written last year. Overall, the book is pretty fun to read. It's also a bit of a coming-of-age book since the kid is like very young. Although it doesn't really show, it doesn't have like childish things. They treat it pretty much as an adult character, in my humble opinion. You also have a couple of siblings from Ender who are also mentioned in a few chapters, and they are also treated pretty much as adults. You don't really hear childish things from them. It's just devices, not devices, their thoughts and their strategic thinking. So you ended up concluding that it's a very strategic thinking family by some reason. They have this genetic predisposition to think about scenarios and stuff like that, but with the naivety of the children. But it doesn't really come across as they are children. It just feels like they are adults. They just name it as children in the book for reasons that I didn't never quite understood. Anyways, you learn a lot about human connection, friendships, isolation, and such stuff, since most of the characters are kids. It also, the fact that they are all kids also links back to the discussions on morality and warmongering that you might have once you finish reading the book, that you need a certain kind of empathy or detachment, or a little bit of both in weird ways, to be able to take warmongering to another level, or to train to become on that level. So it broaches on these kind of subjects for a little while, which is a bit hard to judge unless you are inside, military training sort of things. The only reference that I have to this is people playing esports and kids playing esports these days, and putting young kids into those kind of roles. And yeah, it's an interesting subject for sure. Nice book overall. I enjoyed it. The story, the way that it was described, all the different scenarios, the battling strategies that they had. I already have the sequel lying around, which I will read next. It's called Speaker for the Dead. And that's actually a title that made me curious about the book to begin with, because one of the chosen artist names from the Cosmoplovsy demo group in the demo scene that I have collaborated with a lot of times is called Speaker of the Dead, randomly picking up a title name from a science fiction book to make it seem like interesting. And actually, from reading this book, like the last chapter is called Speaker of the Dead as well, and I guess the sequel picks up on that. You learn what that sentence means, what the Speaker of the Dead actually is. And yeah, it actually makes the name mean more, and it applies well. So yeah, was an interesting revelation, and I'm very interested to hear more about it when I read the sequel as well. So yeah, these are the 3 books that I've been reading. I recommend all 3 of them for slightly different reasons. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, maybe donate me something through patreon.com/psenough, or you can also buy me something on Amazon. On Amazon wishlist, I will put the 3rd game of the series, of the 3rd book of the series, which is called Xenocide. So if you want to sponsor me that one, that would be cool. I'm just double checking the name. It is Xenocide. Ended up being 6 books overall. I only have the first 2. So I will try to get Xenocide last. So I will add that to my Amazon wishlist as well, if you want to sponsor me that. Other than that, I hope you're having a great day. See you next video. Bye bye, everybody. Take care.